Lesson 31, I will interpret division word problems as either number of groups unknown or group size unknown. All right, so let's go ahead and write our name on our problem set, and then let's take a look at the directions. Draw a tape diagram and solve. The first two tape diagrams have been drawn for you. Identify if the group size or the number of groups is unknown. So let's take a look at number 1. Monique needs exactly 4 plates on each table for the banquet. If she has 312 plates, how many tables is she able to prepare? So I can see here they have a total of 312 plates. And we know that they need 4 plates in each group. So this means that we know the group size. We know that there's going to be 4 in each group. We just don't know how many groups we can make because we don't know how many tables. So that's what this tape diagram is showing. So how can we figure out how many tables they need? Well, this is going to be a division problem, right? We're going to take 312 and we're going to divide it by 4. I want you to pause the video. I want you to go ahead and solve to see how many tables are going to need, and go ahead and answer this question with a sentence. Okay, so let's take a look here. So I have 312 divided by 4, and I ended up with 30. I couldn't divide the hundreds by 4, so I had to decompose and make this 31 tens. And 31 tens divided by 4 is 7 tens. Notice that 7 is in the tens place. 7 times 4 is 28. So when I subtracted, I was left with 3 tens, and I added that to my 2 ones. And 32 divided by 4 was 8, and that left me with a remainder of 0. So now that I have my answer of 78, I went back and looked at my question. How many tables is she able to prepare? And I said Monique is able to prepare 78 tables. Okay, so let's look at problem number 2. So we have 2,365 books were donated to an elementary school. If 5 classrooms shared the books equally, how many books did each class receive? So we just read the problem, and you can see that they've already drawn the tape diagram for us. So our total is 2,365 books. We know how many groups because they said they're dividing it into 5 classrooms. So this time, instead of knowing the group size, we know the number of groups. We're trying to figure out how many is in each group. So that's why the question mark is inside here, and it's been divided into 5 parts. So how can we figure out how many books each class will receive? Well, again, we're going to use division. We're going to take 2,365, and we're going to put that into 5 equal groups. I want you to pause the video. I want you to finish the division, and then we're writing our number sentence right now. I want you to finish by writing a word sentence. Okay, so let's take a look at how your division went. Again, I could not take 2,000s and put them into 5 groups, so I had to decompose these 2,000s into hundreds. So I have 23 hundredths. 23 hundredths divided by 5 gives me 4 hundredths in each group, and 4 times 5 is 20, and that left me with 3 hundredths left over. I took those 3 hundredths and added those to the 6 tens, and that gave me 36 tens. 36 divided by 5 is 7. 7 times 5 is 35, so that meant that I had 1 10 left over, and I added that to my 5 ones, and that gave me 15. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 3 times 5 is 15, and that left me with a remainder of 0. So, how many books did each class receive? Each class received 473 books. All right, let's take a look at problem number 3. This time, we have to read, draw, write a number sentence, and write a word sentence all by ourselves. If 1,503 kilograms of rice was packed in sacks weighing 3 kilograms each, how many sacks were packed? I want you to take a minute to draw a tape diagram that represents this problem. Then let's come back and see if our tape diagrams are similar. Okay, so first of all, in my tape diagram, I know what the total is, right? I know my total is 1,503. So when I look at this 3 kilograms each, this is the information that I was given. I had to ask myself, Does this tell me the number of groups, or does this tell me the group size? Well, it says that they're putting these in sacks weighing 3 kilograms each. So this is group size. And what I'm trying to figure out is the number of groups, or the number of sacks in this case. So when I drew my tape diagram, I made one group and I put 3 in the group because I know that each group is going to be 3 kilograms each, but I don't know how many groups there's going to be. So that's what this question mark represents. So how am I going to figure out how many sacks? Well, again, we're going to be using division. So I'm going to go ahead and write my division sentence. It's going to be 1,503 divided by 3. I'm going to pause the video again because I want you to solve this long division. So this is our word, or our number sentence, and then I want you to answer it with a word sentence. And then let's come back and see if we agree. Okay, so let's start with our division. So again, I could not take 1,000 and put that into 3 groups. So I had to decompose this 1,000 into hundreds, and I divided 15 hundredths by 3. So that gave me 5 hundredths in each group. So 5 times 3 is 15, and that left me with 0 hundredths. Well, I had no tens, so I was trying to take 0 and put that into 3 groups, and that can't happen. So I had to put a 0 up here in my quotient. So 0 times 3 is 0, so again I have 0. Then I was ready to divide my 3 ones, and 3 ones divided by 3 is 1, and 1 times 3 is 3, so I had no remainder. So how many sacks were packed? 501 sacks were packed. That rhymes, doesn't it? All right, so let's take a look at number 4. So again, we're going to read the problem, we're going to draw, we're going to write a number sentence, and we're going to write a word sentence. Okay, so let's read through this together. Rita made 5 batches of cookies. There was a total of 2,400 cookies. If each batch contained the same number of cookies, how many cookies were in 4 batches? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a minute to draw what you think you can draw to represent this problem. And then let's come back and see if our drawings are similar. Okay, well, first of all, I know the total. It tells me right here there was a total of 2,400 cookies. So I went ahead and labeled that right off the bat. And it told me that she made 5 batches of cookies. So that would tell me that there are 5 groups. So I know the number of groups. I don't know the group size. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out how many cookies were in one batch. So my tape diagram, I divided it into 5 parts, and I labeled one of the parts with a question mark because that's what I'm trying to figure out. So how can I figure out how many cookies were in one batch? Well, that would be division, right? So I'm going to take 2,400. I'm going to divide that by 5. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I want you to go ahead and solve this and see what you come up with. Okay, so when I took 2,400 and I divided it by 5, first of all, I cannot take 2,000s and put that into 5 groups. So I had to decompose this into hundreds, and I divided 2,4 hundredths into 5 groups, and that put 4 in each group. So 4 times 5 is 20, so that left 4 hundredths, and I added that to 0 tens. So that when I decomposed these 4 hundredths into tens, I had 40 tens divided by 5, which was 8 tens. 8 times 5 is 40, and that left 0. But remember, I haven't divided the ones, and even though there's no ones here, I have to put a 0 in the ones place, because if not, that changes this from 480 to 48, which is very different. I went ahead and filled this on out, minus 0 equals 0. So when I got ready to go back and write my question, it says, how many cookies were in 4 batches? This doesn't tell us how many cookies were in 4 batches. This tells us how many cookies were in 1 batch. I want you to think about that for a minute. How can you figure out how many cookies were in 4 batches? I want you to solve that, and then let's come back and see if we got the same answer. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about our answer. How many cookies are in 4 batches? Well, I got that there were 1,920 cookies in 4 batches. Now, how did you get your answer? Well, one way would be able to take 480 and multiply it times 4, which is what I almost did. But then I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute. If this is how much cookies are in 5 batches, if I take away 1 batch, that will leave me with 4 batches. So that's what I did. I chose to use subtraction. I just took one batch away from 5 batches, and that left me with 4 batches. But maybe you chose to use multiplication. Did we get the same answer? Well, if we both did the problem correctly, then we should have. All right, let's take a look at problem number 5. So again, we're going to read, we're going to draw, we're going to write a number sentence, and we're going to write a word sentence. Every day, Sarah drives the same distance to work and back home. If Sarah drove 1,005 miles in 5 days, how far did Sarah drive in 3 days? So I want you to think about what could you draw to represent this problem. Let's come back and see if our diagrams are the same. Okay, so first of all, I know my total is 1,005 miles because it tells me right off the bat. And it says that this is how far that she drove in 5 days. So that's going to tell me the number of groups. I know that this is happening over 5 days, so I have 5 groups. I'm trying to figure out how much is in each group, or how much did she drive per day. So when I drew my tape diagram, I divided it into 5 parts because there were 5 days, and I wanted to know how much she drove in 1 day. So how can I figure out how far she drove in 1 day? Well, I could use division, right? I want you to go ahead and finish this problem. I want you to go ahead and, we already drew, I want you to write a number sentence. I want you to solve this problem and see if we come back and see if we get the same answer. If you get stuck, you can always press play. Okay, so let's take a look here. So first of all, I started with my division because I knew that I wanted to figure out how much was in each day. So when I divided, I could not divide 1,000 into 5 groups, so I had to decompose this and make this 10 hundredths. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 2 times 5 is 10, and that leaves me with 0. When I brought down the 0 in the tens place, 0 divided by 5 is 0, and 0 times 5 is 0, so I'm still left with 0. Then I brought down my 5 ones, and 5 ones divided by 5 is 1, and 1 times 5 is 5, so I had no remainder. So I had to go back and think about, what is this telling me? This tells me how much is in each group, or how much Sarah drove in 1 day. When I went back to the question, it said, how far did Sarah drive in 3 days? So I knew that I wasn't finished. If this is how far she drove in 1 day, I had to multiply that times 3 to find out how far she drove in 3 days. Then I was ready to answer the question. Sarah drove 603 miles in 3 days. So in this problem set, we were really taking a look at whether or not the problem was asking us about the number of groups, or the group size was unknown. It's really important to understand that to be able to solve the problem.